Hey, everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage. We're back for another edition of the Thyroid Answers podcast, and I have another guest today. Her name is Allison Samon. Sounds like Damon, but they are not related. Okay, so she would maybe not like to have a little relationship there. Have Matt throw a couple bucks here or there, but she is a functional nutritionist, right? And she says she's the mystery illness detective. So we're going to find out what that means. We're going to talk about hormones and toxins and how that might affect thyroid physiology today. But Allison, welcome to the Thyroid Answers podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here with you. I'm great.
All right. So first of all, who the heck is Allison Samon, whose last name rhymes with Damon, but there's no relation to Matt Damon? Why should people kind of want to listen to what you have to say?
Yeah. Well, I am a functional nutrition and lifestyle practitioner. I work virtually with people who are struggling with chronic illness to get them out of it, escape mystery symptoms so that they can redesign their lives to be fit, energized, pain-free in ways that are easy, fun, and sustainable. And I got to this because I struggled for over 10 years with unexplained chronic pain and migraines and hormone imbalance and acne and constipation and like all of the things. And I went to all of the people and I did what I thought was all of the things and nothing seemed to work. And so along the way, I finally had this divine intervention or whatever that led me to, oh my God, this newfangled concept that I'm sure you've heard of, nutrition, was the one thing that nobody ever talked about. No doctor, no specialist, nobody ever talked to me about it. And so I help people not take 10 years to figure all of these, why are they having all of these chronic and mystery symptoms? We don't have to take 10 years of suffering to figure it out and bring your body into healing mode and start to recover.
So when you said you went to all the people, were you doing all the people in allopathic medicine? Were you doing all the people, including integrative medicine? Were you doing all the people that were functional medicine? Like you were hitting all of those things and
I think so.
Still not getting that discussion?
I think so, because it starts off with your primary care, and then I was seeing neurologists for chronic pain. One of my neurologists actually did acupuncture, so I started doing that, and that was actually very helpful, but not for all of the things. But it was very helpful for some of the things. And so I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And I went to chiropractors. I had Reiki. I did all of the things. And it was muscle reactivation technique therapy was one of the things that I did. And that person introduced me to nutrition that I was like, I thought that I was eating healthy and had a healthy diet and lifestyle, because at that time I was thinking, well, if you're not fat, therefore you're healthy. No. But that was the way we were all thinking that way. So if it's fat free, you can have it. If it was the wrong mentality, but I was following all of the popular science at the time.
Well, I think
trends at the time.
Yeah. I think we've all done that from time to time, right? It's fat is bad for you, right? Carbs are good for you. There's all kinds of eggs are bad for you, right? Because they have fat. There's all this stuff. Sugar's good for you. Fat's bad, right? Yeah. And we realized, 20 years later, it was a terrible experiment that is led to chronic illness. But so you do this nutrition, you learn about nutrition. And between nutrition and some type of functional health model, you're able to kind of help yourself recover? Did you find somebody in the functional medicine space who then helped you recover?
It was a lot. No, I came to that after going to nutrition school. While I was struggling with my unexplained chronic pain and all of my illnesses, we had tragedy in my family. My 50-year-old father died, died. And he did not fit the picture of it was severe heart disease that nobody knew he had. And he didn't fit the profile of somebody who should die so young. He was fit and active, didn't drink, didn't smoke. But what I learned later, like in retrospect, okay, his diet wasn't so great. It was very standard American diet.
Mm-hmm.
And there was also heart disease in the family. And so his mother had had 2 heart attacks, but we always thought it was because she was a smoker, because back in her day, you were encouraged to smoke. Society, ladies, they smoke.
Right.
And so we didn't make that connection. And I started, so it was between what the hell was wrong with me? Because I was thinking, I mean, when I was 25, I had an anxiety attack, and I was having them all the time, but thinking my life is half over, because I wonder if what's going on with me are early warning signs of what my dad had, but we didn't know. And so I'm going to die soon. And so it was a lot of depression and all of that for a long time that I think helped keep me in the stuck place.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, it was my come to Jesus of, I think I'm supposed to figure this out. I think it was when they said, let's do exploratory surgery. Because I went to the top orthopedic surgeons in New York City, and Wayne Gretzky's guy, like all of these like top people. And everybody was a little bit confused because my pain was not consistent where the tears were. And it was just, I was trying to like reconcile everything that was going on. And it's okay, there has to be something I'm missing here. And I was also trying to figure out what the hell happened to my dad, and how could this possibly happen? And so that's what finally led me to the guy who helped me to walk again, who introduced me to nutrition. And then it was like a drug, a positive drug, but I got, addicted, obsessed of learning more and more and more. And I went to nutrition school. So I used to be in television. I was not in this field at all. And so it was the antithesis of health. But because I started working on myself, then other, like the camera guys and some of the actors, like people were asking, like, what are you doing that you have so much energy? How come you're not? I wasn't taking smoke breaks. I wasn't drinking coffee. I don't drink soda. I never did. And I didn't, like, one thing is not like the other. And then I started like unofficially health coaching them.
Right.
Went back to school, and that's when I learned about functional medicine and the Institute for Functional Medicine, and started doing trainings, and then it was from there.
So if you go to nutrition school, you become a nutritionist, but you're a functional nutritionist. Somebody might say, well, what's the difference? What did you learn differently that you decided, hey, I got to put this functional in front of nutritionist?
Yeah.
What separates you from a regular nutritionist?
Well, because we're looking at the whole person approach. And so it's diet and lifestyle, and how everything matters, and all of the things in your life are connected. And also, we're all unique. So you can have 10 people with the same diagnosis. You can have 10 people with hypothyroid, for instance, and the route to resolution for them can look different because they have different health histories. They have different lifestyles. They have different preferences. They have different psychology that they're working with. So all of the different things can vary person to person. And so I really liked that no one size fits all approach, because I felt like I was sort of supposed to fit in a box, which is why all of these top people were like, I don't know, because I wasn't fitting into one box. And so it just resonated with me a lot.
So part of what allopathic medicine does, for good or bad, and it was bad, but I was in that model and got out of that model, is that they're really good at diagnosing a disease or condition that needs some level of crisis care, management, surgery, medication to manage a condition.
Yeah.
But at that point, they've already had dysfunction for an extended period of time. And really our job as functional practitioners is to say, okay, what's the underlying cause here, and address the cause. And sometimes that gets bastardized a little bit because we have people with allopathic thinking coming to functional medicine, which is great to see more people come to a functional medicine, but they're dragging their dogma with them, which is, hey, those drugs are bad. I'm going to give you a bunch of supplements instead, and that'll be the solution. And I just had somebody leave my office who's seeing a functional medicine practitioner, and they're taking 20 individual supplements per day, it's probably, 60 capsules per day. And they're saying, I'm seeing a functional practitioner. I just want your opinion. I'm like, you're not seeing a functional medicine practitioner. You're seeing somebody who's practicing allopathic medicine with supplements. That's a different thing. And
Yeah, they're
so
not thinking functionally.
right. So our issue shouldn't be, oh, this is deficient, so let me give it to you. It should be, why are those things deficient? What's causing that? Like, why is, in my opinion, is that instead of saying, oh, you've got GI dysfunction, why is the GI tract adapting that way? You've got thyroid physiology problems. Okay, why is the thyroid physiology adapting that way? And I don't know, did you learn that in that type of thinking in nutrition school, or did you actually have to, that's where functional medicine created the difference? Because in nutrition school, they're just saying, hey, here's the food plate pyramid thing, and we need you to eat this way, versus maybe as a functional nutritionist, you're going, okay, wait a second. Yes, let's talk about what you eat's important, how you eat important, how you digest is important. All the other things are important.
Yeah, in nutrition school, it wasn't quite so much following the plate, but it was it gave me a great teaching me how to think, not what to think, like learning about all of these different dietary theories and why they work for one person and not another, and how they're all kind of right, but not for everybody. For certain people, they are right. And so that was really helpful, but I didn't understand how to think through a functional lens. I mean, it didn't exist. Like, I didn't know of it until, it was just kind of starting then, or at least came into my world then. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting to look at a person and not look at their symptoms. Like, I used to be caught up in that. Like, somebody comes to you and they have all of these things, and and they sort of stress vomit it all at you, and you're like, okay. And that used to, you get into their mess, or at least as a new health coach, because that's how I began. That's kind of what happens. But then when you are taking a functional approach, I'm like, okay, and none of that matters. I mean, of course it matters. I don't want them suffering through all of these things, but I'm not getting lost in the weeds of all of these symptoms. It's more, okay, well, let's look at their poop, let's look at their sleep, and let's look at what else might be bringing in like mucking up the system. And so that's kind of where I start first is, are they pooping? Are they sleeping? How are they eating? And then things start to, we sort of clear the muddy waters, and then stuff starts to be revealed, and symptoms start to ameliorate, and then we go from there.
I think oftentimes a person comes in with either a bunch of symptoms that they want addressed, right? Or a diagnosis that they want you to treat.
Right.
And the important thing, especially for the listeners, to understand that is allopathic medicine. And so what I think Allison's saying here, because I would say the same thing, all those things you're experiencing aren't the thing I need to treat. All those things that you're experiencing, symptoms and signs and diagnosis, those are the things that are giving us the clue of where potential problems are, or systems that are starting to break down due to excessive stress. And the things that you want, I want my hair back, I want to lose weight. The weight is the result of chronic inflammation and compromised mitochondrial function. You're not going to lose weight unless you reduce the chronic inflammatory cell stress so that your mitochondria can start to kick into gear. Can you lose weight? Absolutely, you can. Take one of the new drugs that's out there that everybody's singing and dancing on TV, and you can regulate your glucose and lose some weight until you stop. And then you'll put it all back and more because you've lost muscle mass in the process. So our job in functional medicine is to, as she said, is to kind of sift through all that noise and static that you're talking about there. All those things are important. But really what we want to do is help you understand this is adaptation. What's driving this, what I say, and if you and I talked about Ari Whitten, who's got the Energy Blueprint podcast, and he and I have talked about this multiple times. I think he and I look at things very similarly. We look at cell physiology and cell stress. We're either in homeostasis or allostasis. And if we're in allostasis, we're in a different state. We have different set of rules in allostasis for cell physiology than we have in homeostasis. And most of the people who are chronically ill are in allostasis. They're not in homeostasis. So you're not going to respond the way you would hope many times. So our job is to get to the root issues driving the problem. So let's go there and talk about, what do you see as some of the root issues that you have to, if somebody's listening to us like, well, I don't know what root issues. So let's talk about, because everybody uses that term and throws it around. What do you see as the things, and I think you already started to talk about those things, talk about sleep and how critical that is, right? And somebody might say, well, what's the big deal with sleep, right? That can't be causing my problems. So let's talk. In my book, The Thyroid Debacle, Kelly and I talk about what we call the fitness factors, the things that you have to have a high level of fitness in to have a higher level of health. So what are the things that you're looking at when somebody's come in to say, okay, this is where problems are likely occurring?
Yeah, well, so we call them the non-negotiables. And so definitely sleep is one of them. I'm working with a woman right now who's been sleeping 2 hours a night. And I thought I was bad. In my television days, it was 4.5. And I kind of thought it was okay. And it's just what I had to do. But no wonder my whole body was crapping out. But I was young, so we can do that. And we don't value our bodies enough and how that wear and tear will affect us in the long run. I think we're very short-sighted, especially when we're young. But she's never going to heal. Your body is never going to heal if you don't give it that time to rest and repair. And so sleep is critical. And sometimes that's really hard. So 2 hours, that's excessive. And for her, she's in adrenal fatigue. And she was waking up throughout the night. So it's not like she's working into the wee hours, where I have worked with people, young people, who, it doesn't mean that you have to be in your 20s, but who are going to bed at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. They think, well, I'll just sleep in the next day, so I get my 8 hours. And it doesn't work that way. You really need to actually back it up and go to sleep, much earlier. And that's hard. I have a 4-year-old, and I work, I have a practice. And so it's challenging going to bed. A lot of stuff has to happen in the evening time before, it's time to go to bed. So I get that struggle. And also working to back up her time. And she immediately felt better, even when she was going to bed at 12:30 versus 2:30. Huge difference in how she felt the next day. And so we're still working on bringing it back. It's just habit, old habit, and a bad habit that she got into. But so sleep is critical. Poop, I said. And so if you're not pooping, I used to not poop, and I thought that was okay because I was busy. I worked in television. Again, I worked long hours. I didn't want anybody to know I was pooping. I didn't want dates to know I had pooped. It's just not something that, now I talk about poop and pee and gas all day, every day. But at the time, that was embarrassing. And it wasn't something, everybody, and there's children's books about it. Everybody poops. And so why is it such a taboo subject that you don't want people to know, I have to go to the bathroom? And so I didn't think it was a big deal. I thought it was more convenient to not have to go all the time. And that's the other thing. You don't want to have to go all the time, right? There's a healthy balance of bowel movements and an unhealthy balance. And so where are you with that? And what does it look like? And teaching people to look at it, because it does tell us a lot about what's going on in there, what's happening with your poop. And so that's one of the first things also is, if they're not pooping, getting them to have a healthy bowel movement. Because if you're not pooping, you're toxic.
Okay, so key criteria for you is assessing somebody's sleep and getting their sleep improved. 2 is assessing, let's say GI function and pooping. If they're not pooping a day, that's kind of your window. Are you pooping every day? Are you passing a couple bananas a day? If you're not passing a couple bananas a day, and for the listener, What does that mean? That's about what the size and shape of your a healthy bowel movement looks like. So if you're actually pooping a banana a day, we've got a different issue, but you should have a well-formed kind of banana-sized bowel movement a couple times, maybe once, twice a day.
1 to 3 times, I say, is good and normal.
Absolutely.
As long
So
as
what's
it's a
number
good
3?
consistency. I would say blood sugar balance. So how are you eating? What are you eating? Are you keeping your blood sugar balance? Because so many people are running on fumes, essentially. Because let's say they are too busy, so they don't have time to cook, and they just grab and go, or they are not hungry in the morning. So again, they're just waiting. Or I like intermittent fasting, which I'm not opposed to intermittent fasting. I just don't think it's for everybody. And certainly not all of the time. And so I get people who are just used to eating 1 meal a day, and yet they have autoimmune, they have all of these symptoms that quickly start to improve once we start getting them nourished in the right frequency for them. And again, that can look different for different people, and sizes of portions can look different, but the quality of those nutrients, getting them in. And sometimes people are avoiding food because they have sensitivities. And so they're having reactions to everything they eat. So they just are now in food fear. And so they don't want to eat. And so they're barely eating anything, and they're using coffee to get by. And eventually they're just going to run themselves into the ground. So I'd say those are the 3 non-negotiables where I start.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about those, and then we'll get into some other things. I'm going to play devil's advocate on a couple of these things, because the person on the other who's listening to this or watching this is saying, yeah, wouldn't we all want to get to sleep every night? So what is, for the person who's saying, I wake up multiple times a night,
yeah,
let's talk about what are some of the things that might trigger somebody to wake up multiple times a night, and what are the strategies to help them? Because people are like, look, I'm not sleeping. If I had a choice, I would sleep through the night, but I'm not sleeping through the night. Is it blood sugar issues? Is it stimulants? Is it caffeine? Is it emotional stress? What are the things that you start to talk to that person about? Obviously, you already talked about patterning, like, okay, let's try and go to bed earlier, but somebody's going, if I could go to bed earlier, I would. So let's talk about how do we go about helping that person improve their sleep quality? What are give me 3 or 4 tips to help somebody have better sleep quality so they can go, oh, all right, I'm not doing that. So let's talk about what some of those might look like.
I mean, so all of the above. It can be all of the above. It can be multiple of those. But yeah, it could be that low blood sugar. Your blood sugar can drop. You can have hypoglycemia while you sleep. And so one of the things that we do is make sure, so have a bedtime snack. A snack, and also a snack is a snack. It's not eating a meal before you go to bed, but having a little something. Like we say in functional medicine, a meat pill. So whether it's a piece of turkey, or for vegetarians and vegans, a little handful of pumpkin seeds. That tryptophan is really going to help your neurotransmitters, help you get into sleep, and have good quality sleep. There's lots of different tricks that we can do for going to bed if it's a blood sugar balance thing. And of course, remembering that your blood sugar, that whole balance starts when you wake up. So if you're having trouble sleeping, you have to go back it up to the day before and what you did, how you started that day, and go. So that's one thing. Stress is huge. And that monkey mind that takes over when we try to go to sleep or while we're sleeping. You know, sometimes it's hard because some people can fall asleep right away, but then they wake up. Other people will just have a lot of trouble falling asleep because their brain just does not shut off. And so having a really good sleep hygiene practice and getting it out of your head, shutting off that subconscious mind, or I do exercises with my clients so that their subconscious brain knows that they're safe. It is safe to go to sleep, and tomorrow is going to be an awesome day. Today may have sucked, but tomorrow is going to be awesome. and just writing that movie and playing that movie and retraining your brain that tomorrow is going to be great. Even if it's just, I hit every green light. That's a win. That's an amazing day. Or I pooped. Find our wins where we can. Because sometimes when you're really sick, there's not a lot of wins, but you find them, these little wins. I remembered to have a snack. That's a win. So that's another reason why people could not get good sleep. And then, of course, waking up to go to the bathroom. And so unless somebody has scar tissue or has other like urinary tract issues, they should be able, a normal functioning adult should be able to go to sleep all night and hold it, or not be awakened by their bladder. If they are, I think it's not usually their bladder that's waking them up, it's cortisol. So they're having a cortisol response that's saying, wake up, there's an emergency, and you also have liquid in your bladder. And so then you're like, oh, I have to pee, but it's not really that you had to pee, it was the cortisol response that woke you up.
Yeah. So are you running, like I think that's perceived a lot, that it is that cortisol is waking people up at night. And I think sometimes there is a cortisol elevation, but in doing lots of nighttime salivary cortisol tests, I don't see that it's a big, I don't see that as the issue that's waking people up. It is for some, but I think there's a different issue for a lot of people that's potentially having an impact. I do agree that there may be problems with blood glucose regulation, but I think then the question becomes is if they have blood glucose regulation during the night, right, the 6-8 hours, then the problem is they have poor glucose regulation because they should be able to fast through that evening. And if cortisol is elevated, let's assume it is, then is cortisol really the problem? Probably not, because the primary hormone that's driving glucose production in a fasted state is glucagon, right? Not cortisol, glucagon. So glucagon's the driver. So if glucagon's the driver and somebody's waking at night, maybe because of a blood sugar issue, and it's a rise in cortisol is causing them to become more alert, or a rise in epinephrine is driving more blood sugar issues, then that may be, then that is the response. That's the adaptive response to poor regulation at the mitochondria at the cellular level. They probably have glucose resistance. They even might have appropriate glucagon production, but they're not getting glucose into the cells. And cells are highly functional and active at night, trying to rebuild, recover, detox, and do things that require a ton of energy. So if you have mitochondrial problems and glucose resistance, I think that's like foundational. And you may be saying, hey, yeah, that's what I'm kind of talking about. But that's what I'm trying to get to, because somebody might be going, but I take a snack at night. Why do I need a snack? You're telling me intermittent fasting is good, and now you're telling me I need a snack before I go to bed. These two things, how can you be telling me I need to intermittent fast but take a snack before I go to bed? Isn't intermittent fasting not eating for a period of time? Right? So
well, that's why
I want to clarify it a little bit.
They should not be on intermittent fasting. I usually am getting people off intermittent fasting so we can clear up this stuff, get into I don't think when you have autoimmune that you should be intermittent fasting. It has to be in a controlled, you have to have your condition managed.
I think a lot of those people can do some time restricted eating, intermittent fasting. I have a lot of patients that do it and they do well, but I do think it's specific, right? Can somebody manage that fast? If they can't regulate glucose, if they're not efficient at burning fat, a time restricted eating may be really difficult, because I'm not giving them glucose. My cells are glucose resistant, so the glucagon is not helping get blood sugar in. And so then when I'm liberating triglycerides and fatty acids from my fat cells, and I don't have the metabolism to burn that either. And so I'm getting these signals like I'm freaking starving, I'm shaky and light, right? So you're getting the signals of those things. So I think it can be used. I think it can be a really effective tool, but again, it's still specific to the individual. But I think when somebody's struggling with those, like waking up chronically at night, I think there's something else amiss here that's going on. And so let me
The liver.
ask you, well, let me ask you this. Most of
Okay.
the people we see have chronic, and you're talking about chronic immune, inflammatory issues. I think the bigger impact there is disordered breathing at night, because most of those people have inflammatory issues. When we lay down at night, soft tissues swell, especially the nasal passages, and now it gets harder to breathe. And so if it gets harder to breathe through your nose, which should be the way, now we open our mouth to breathe. When we open our mouth to breathe, right now we're blowing off too much carbon dioxide. That affects our what we call the Bohr effect. It's harder for me to get oxygen off my red blood cells to the tissues. And then my cells are and my brain are becoming hypoxic. And then we're activating our fight or flight system that then is causing us to continue to wake up, right? They may not even be the person who has diagnosed sleep apnea at this point, but their disordered breathing, to me, is a major cause of nighttime sleep disruption. Do you talk to your clients about appropriate breathing and the impact of that?
I will now.
Oh, sorry.
I think that's really great. I mean, I do breath work with clients all of the time, so I know the importance of breathing, but I think that that's a really good point that you're making, and it sort of is like the underlying mechanism of why they could have a cortisol response, because if their body thinks that they're dying, that they can't breathe, that they're suffocating, you're going to wake up.
Yeah.
And then think you just had to pee.
Right. Well, I think, and if you look at some of the literature out there, we used to think we would hope we'd all sleep like a 10-year-old, right? Like they pass out in the backseat of the car and you can carry them in the house, slam their head on the doorway on the way in, right? Throw them down on the bed, take all their clothes off, redress them, and they're still asleep. That would be awesome if we could all do that. But I think the thought process today is we as adults are designed to go through those 90 to 120 minute sleep cycles, not by accident, but we go light sleep to deep sleep, back up to light sleep. And I think the purpose of that is because we have to be alert and awake. So we get into that light sleep state so that we can be like, any noises, any problems in here, anything going on? Nope. Okay. Oh, bladder's a little bit fuller. Let me go pee. Oh, my shoulder hurts. Let me flip around. And then we go back into that deep sleep. But the kid, they just got to go to bed and sleep. They're not worried about safety of a house, protection of the spouse, right?
Right.
Anybody breaking in. They're in sleep and recovery mode. But as an adult, maybe that's the reason we have more of those sleep and wake cycles is to help. And we talk about, coordination of thoughts and all those other things. But I think there's a tendency to be to have lighter sleep. And when you're in that lighter sleep, then you're more perceptive to what's going on. Arm's asleep. I was falling asleep on my arm or whatever, right? My bladder's full. Maybe I should get up and pee, right? And as long as you can get back to sleep, if it's once or twice a night, you're waking up and then going right back to sleep, I don't think it's a huge issue. I think the bigger issue is I woke up and now can't get back to sleep, right?
Yeah. Totally.
And then, so we talked about sleep. And so if it's waking up through the night, you talked about potentially having a snack. That can be beneficial for some people, but I think that's a good symptom management tool until you start to address some of the other stuff.
Correct.
The emotional stress piece, I think, is huge. And I just talked to somebody, they're like, well, the nights I have to work early, I can't sleep those nights. Like, okay, why do you think that is? Well, because I'm worried out, I don't want to be late. I don't want to that. I'm like, yeah, okay. What time of the day do you wake up on the other days? Oh, a couple hours later. Okay. So there's your problem, right? You're disrupting that sleep sequence and pattern. You probably need to shift to an earlier time of the day. But emotional stress plays a big role, right? If you're I got to get on a flight tomorrow at 6:00, guaranteed you're not sleeping, right? You could set 3 alarms and know you have them set.
You wake up before all of them.
Right. So you don't, but if you didn't set the alarm, you'd probably sleep through it. But your brain is kind of like, I'm not going to sleep through this. So give me a couple strategies for the emotional stress piece. Like, what are some tips that if somebody's listening that you might say they could do to quiet the mind before they're going to bed, so they're not have that monkey mind going on?
Yeah, I love this. So easy thing could be journaling. And for some people, I've had some people who are resistant to it because it's sort of a slippery slope that if they start to journal, then they're just going to keep going and going, or editing their work. I've heard from writers are like, no, I can't do that because I'll start like editing and revising. And I'm like, it's just a dump. It's brain dump. But what I like, so that works for some people. But what I like is just a gratitude list. So 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for that happened that day or that are happening the next day. And so you're programming your mind to look for good things and to be expecting good things, because your day-to-day may not be great. And so finding those good things, writing that down, and it's sort of like calling it into existence, I feel. But also it puts you going to bed thinking happy thoughts.
Yeah.
I
agree with that.
When we're talking about the breathing, so Dr. Weil talks about the 4-8-7 breathing. That is really helpful. Or box breathing, similar, where you're taking a deep breath for 4 seconds and you hold it for 8, and then you exhale for 7, and you do that like 3 times. I've done that when I can't sleep, and you're just laying there and it's like, okay, I gotta go to sleep. And that it shuts everything off. You're focusing on your breathing, and it just sort of helps you drift off. I mean, I've never done it more than 3 times before I don't remember anything anymore, right? Before you go. So the breathing is really important, because also it's letting your body know it's safe to relax. It's time to relax, shutting off the brain, relaxing your nervous system, getting into that. And then there's a technique that I love doing with people, which is Ho'oponopono. You know about that?
No.
It's the Hawaiian prayer for forgiveness.
Okay.
And I love this one because let's say there's an issue going on in the family with the spouse, with the kids, with the boss, whatever is happening. And it's sometimes I do it in a way that's a little bit different than if you looked up Ho'oponopono, Hawaiian prayer for forgiveness. I do it in a little bit of a different way, because I don't feel like you're asking for somebody else's forgiveness. You're doing this just to yourself. You're not doing this confronting the person that you may be having an issue with or that you're worried about. It's private. It's only in your head. And I liken it to upgrading your operating system, that whatever is going on right now, the behaviors, the thought processes that you have are the coping strategy that you developed then, because you were in an abusive relationship, because you were very sick, because you were in that car accident, because XYZ happened, and this was how you had to deal with it. And so you had these negative thoughts, or you had this anxiety or whatever. That's not you anymore, because now you're here working on all of this stuff to get your body into healing mode, and not just your body, but your mind, all of it. You're getting your whole life back. And so you're forgiving yourself. It's forgiving yourself for not sticking with the diet, for not taking your supplement, for not drinking the water, whatever it is that you're not doing, or it's taking too long. Like it's been 2 years and I still haven't. Forgiving yourself, not the other person. And so it would go something like this, like, I'll use myself as an example. So I would say, I love you, Allison. Thank you for, I love you, Allison. I'm sorry for running this program that I just can't get it right. As an example, I just can't get this right. Thank you for showing me I'm still running it. Please forgive me and know I'm deleting it now. It was an old program Allison couldn't get it right. I just couldn't no matter what I do, I mess it up and I just can't get it right. Forgiving myself. I love you, Allison. I'm sorry for running this program that I just can't get it right. Changing the thought processes in our head. Thank you for showing me I'm still running it. Please forgive me and know I'm deleting it now. And so doing that on repeat, like whether you can't go to sleep, it works great when you can't go to sleep, but also just in your every day. I like it in the shower. There's something about water, washing dishes. It's a really nice exercise. So I love that one.
So changing kind of the mental conversation that's going on. I know you said something about taking the wins. I think that's important too for people. I try and get people to consider maybe something what I call an after action report at the end of the day, right? Is just kind of take a look at the day, and you're not going to win at everything. We would love to all win at everything, but you don't have to win at everything to have a successful day. And I think that's one of the things people stress about. I didn't get this done. This didn't get completed. I still have to do this, and they're worried about it. Great. If you do an after action report at the end of the day, you look at the things that, what did I want to get accomplished? What did I get accomplished? And what didn't I get accomplished? And the things that you didn't get accomplished, ask yourself, how important are they really if I didn't put the effort into doing them? Are they still worth it? And if they are, great. Right. If you have your journal or your notepad right there, write them down for those. And I think it is beneficial for the person who's perseverating to write those things down, because keep a notepad or pen next to your bed, because if there's thoughts, if you don't get that thought out of your brain, you're going to continue to think about it. Like, I can't forget to do this tomorrow. I can't forget to do this tomorrow. And that'll perseverate. You get that written down, and that gives you some idea that it's okay. It's down. I won't forget it. It's good. But the other thing to do is, this kind of goes along with the gratitude piece, is give yourself kudos for the win, right? What did I do? What did I get accomplished today? And I always look at it like, if I got over half of what I wanted to get done completed, it's a win, right? I'm better than 50%. It's a win for the day. I didn't get that done. Well, why didn't I get it done today? Well, it wasn't a priority. So is it really a priority? Is it really my priority, or is it somebody else's priority? It's somebody else's priority, right? And so we just talked about email before we got on here. Why don't you answer your email? Everybody asks me, why wouldn't you answer your email every day? Because email is not today's priority. My priority is a whole bunch of other things. That's why I organize my email answering to 2 days a week, because that's when I put priority on it. It might be your priority. The same thing like the text message. You didn't answer my text, right? Because I don't answer texts every time they come across. Well, I need to get a hold of you, because that's your priority. That's not my priority. And I think too many of us take on everybody else's priorities as our own, which creates stress, because then we don't get to our priorities. So I think things like the breath work is important, writing your journaling and getting your ideas down so you reinforce what's your priority, doing a to-do list, writing an after action report at the end of the day, doing the things of gratitude. I think those are all fantastic tips. So those are good. So we talked about sleep. Now we got to talk about, you talked about GI health and pooping. That's a complex thing. We talked about blood sugar balance. I think we talked about that a little bit, but I know we wanted to get into a little bit of some of the triggers that cause people chronic health issues. So, but poor sleep, poor respiration, poor gut health. I think blood sugar dysregulation, if you have good dietary fitness, you can still have blood sugar dysregulation, and that's the result of. But when we think about what are some of the big things that can have impact on create excessive cell stress, and that's the window I always talk from, is if cellular stress becomes excessive, by whether it's organisms, toxins, thoughts, trauma, metabolism, disrupted sleep, hypoxia because of disrupted breathing patterns, any or all of those can create that excessive stress load. And you mentioned toxins as a potential one of those. And I agree. In our book, Kelly and I talk about environmental fitness. So let's talk a little bit about how toxins, talk to your patients about sleep. You start talking about diet, nutrition to help them poop better. You've talked to them about better nutrition so that hopefully that starts to help regulate blood sugar balances a little bit. But now we're talking about what, from a toxicity standpoint, how do toxins potentially trigger this cell stress response or this mystery illness response, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that first, and then we'll get into where do we find them and what are we supposed to do about it, right?
Yeah.
So how might toxins, let's talk about when we say that environmental toxins or toxins can impact the physiology, what are we talking about for people?
Well, so we're talking about not the stuff that's out there per se, but the stuff that's in here. So in our homes, in our bathrooms, in our kitchens, in our living rooms. It's that stuff, that unsuspecting stuff, the stuff that we likely grew up using, is actually wreaking havoc on our endocrine system, on our, and then by default causing weight gain and respiratory issues and neurological issues and even skin issues and all of these things. And so shutting off that toxic tap. And so it's one of the things that I do is we take a look at what are the household cleaning products that you're using, the skincare products, the makeup, what are the things that are that you're putting in, on, and around your body? So for instance, phthalates. So phthalates are not a thing, like you won't see phthalates on a label. You might say phthalate free on a label, but it's a class of chemicals that is used to make plastics soft. And so everything from your rubber ducky that you give to the baby to your shampoo bottle that is soft. Candles, scented candles. I mean, I used to have all of the air fresheners and I had the membership cards where you punch 10 and you get one free with the candles and the air fresheners and these things that we think, the laundry detergents with the scent. That's the other thing that it does. So not only do they make plastics soft, but they also help keep scent. So if you're walking down the street and a woman, you smell somebody's perfume or their hair, their shampoo, and they're long gone, but you smell it, it's lingering. That's phthalates that's doing that. And that's not good. They actually wreak havoc. They're a class of chemicals, but they're classified as obesogens. And so a number of things fall under the obesogen category, but basically it's a class of chemicals that can reprogram your fat cells to actually make more fat cells or make the cells that you have become bigger and more plentiful. And so it's not just about fat, but if you're taking cells that would ordinarily be a bone cell or an eye cell and you're turning it into a fat cell, so you're having less of the thing it was supposed to be and more of a thing that you don't want more of, that you probably are having trouble detoxifying out anyway because something is mucked up in your system, because we have a remarkable detoxification system because we're inundated by it every day, all day, but at levels that I don't think historically we've had before, because our evolutionarily, we haven't evolved as far as technology has. Like we can't keep up pace with that. And so this is why so many people have their body burden run a thing over, if you will. Right. So should I go on?
Yeah, well, we're talking about toxins. So you're saying, hey, there are things in our environment, in our carpet, in our pots and pans, in our perfumes, in our body stuff that are chemicals that once they get into the body, they put more, they're toxic to some of the cells and tissues. They can disrupt hormone physiology. They can
Yeah.
they can drive inflammation. They can disrupt thyroid physiology. They can be toxic to the tissues that activate the immune system.
Accelerated aging, infertility. I mean, the list goes on. Yeah.
So these things are potentially everywhere. So one of the things that somebody may say is, Allison, they're everywhere, right? So what are you doing with somebody to help them as a functional nutritionist, as a health coach and a lifestyle coach? What are you doing with them to start to say, hey, you don't have to understand necessarily the burden and how it all works, but just know that this is a load. It's contributing to the stress load on your cells and tissues, and we need to lower that. So where are you taking somebody? Where are you starting? Because you could easily overload somebody, and you're talking about emotional stress, and now you're telling them that everything in their environment is potentially toxic to their system. That can really throw somebody off the edge and into anxiousness, right? So how do you, so tell us, how do you start, and how do you work somebody through this? What are the most important places to start without creating anxiousness, anxiety, and chaos?
Yeah. So we want to work to control the things that we can and stress less about the things that we can't. And so it kind of depends on the person, depends on if there's somebody who's heavily using products on their body. I mean, phthalates are one of the things that you if there's only one thing that you can change, like remove that. And that could be from nail polish. Like, you have to identify where it might be coming from. And so it's teaching them how to make better choices. And so it really depends on the person. Is it that they're eating a lot of canned food? So if it's a lot of canned food, okay, because that's a convenience. We have to make sure that it's at least BPA-free lining. And when possible, let's get dried, like beans, for instance. Like, let's get dried beans, or let's get things in jars, or keep them in jars, so that the BPA or aluminum, BPA is there to protect the food or liquid from aluminum leaching into it. And instead we'll get BPA, which is a synthetic, or was designed to be originally as a synthetic form of estrogen. So it is a hormone disruptor. If we can avoid that and just making that switch, like finding the easy things, but identifying where those places might be coming from. Maybe, and it might be in the cookware. So not using non-stick. Now that's a bigger deal, because to have to replace all your cookware, that's an investment. And so maybe that's not something that you want to start, but if anything is scratched, like if you have non-stick cookware that's scratched, you don't want to be using it anymore. And maybe we can just bring in, let's say, a cast iron pan, which are not expensive. And, $20, you can get a pan. And learning how to use that, making one change here and there, so that they're not, like, I wouldn't go and give them a list of, like, here are all the chemicals you need to avoid, and here are all the places that you can find them. But I would look at where in their life am I thinking we have a tap that needs to be, a toxic tap that needs to be turned off. And so sometimes it's, oh, you're lighting candles every night. Okay, well, why don't we do essential oils instead? Let's make this switch.
Yeah. And for the listener, I think it's too traumatic. For many times, I'll see somebody like, I got this, and I got to get rid of that, and I got to change this, I got to change that. You can't do everything at once. So what Kelly and I talk about in the book, we use the free analogy. We want to filter things that we need to be filtered. So I'm sure you talk about this, like water, air, right? Those things can be filtered. And we'll talk about that. We talk about reduce. If it's something you do a lot of, you may not be able to eliminate, but you can reduce the exposure to it. Yeah. Maybe you exchange, like you were talking about, that nonstick pan for a cast iron pan. Or the other part of that free analogy is eliminate. So filter, reduce, exchange, or eliminate. Those are the things you want to think about. You can't do them all at the same time, right?
No.
So
I wouldn't even mention them all at the same time.
Right. So you start, like you said, you start with the easy things. One of the things and you're talking about chemicals and you're talking about phthalates, and somebody might be listening to this and saying, but why would it be in there if it wasn't safe? The government wouldn't put it in there. Look, some of these chemicals are tested, they're tested by themselves and not necessarily at the load that we get some of these things. But you're never exposed to one chemical at a time. You're exposed to hundreds of chemicals at a time, and there's a synergistic effect of these things. So looking at your environment is important, but try and do so you don't create that stress and anxiety one thing at a time. So do you start with water? Like, do you start looking at their water and their filtration of their water? Is that an important thing for you? And what are the
Absolutely,
strategies that you would
100%.
recommend there for maybe reducing the load there?
And yeah, there's lots of options there. So if I find that they're using disposable plastic water bottles, that's one of the first things that goes. It's really easy to get good quality filters for, I even have one in my water bottle, which is not here right now. But I love like Go Pure pods, and I have them in my water bottle. And so if I'm at the park, if I'm at the airport, wherever I am, I can always feel good about refilling my water. I always have my bottle with me. So that's an easy thing. There are also pitchers like beyond Brita. There's other pitchers that are that help filter out things. Of course, there's an evolution to that, like depending on your infrastructure and what you want to invest, but you can have, really good water filtration systems that sit on your counter. You can get them that go under your sink. You can get them that take care of your whole house. I have filters in my bathroom and in the shower because, when you have hot water, then that can release chemicals that you're inhaling. So you don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be inhaling. It's the heat that activates them, that releases a lot of these chemicals. So I do think it's important to have that in your shower. And if you're unsure about what your water quality is like, the Environmental Working Group has a database where you can go and look up what your municipality, what's in your water. And it's free. Anybody can go look, and it's really eye-opening to see what is there. And it's not that your city, your local government is trying to poison you. That's not it. It's that the infrastructure is so old and the influx of chemicals coming into the water systems are so much that it has not been updated. And so we have to do what we can to filter that out. And there's some really, really great filters that help.
So, yeah. And I think if you go to ewg.org and go into their, I think it's called Healthy Water or something, like the water database, you put in your zip code. But it'll also give you an idea of what type of filter you need to get some of the things that they measure in your local. So that can help you. You could do like reverse osmosis, but then keep in mind, if you do reverse osmosis, you're taking everything out. So you're also removing minerals, and you need those minerals. So if you're going to do that, you got to add that back. So water's a great place to start. The next we talked about, what's the next big piece that when you're talking about toxicity, where would you go? Okay, I got water handled. I'm getting somebody drinking cleaner water. Where's the next piece to go to from toxicity?
Food. You got to eat organic food. Like that's a must, non-negotiable for me, is organic, because you're getting a lot of things in not organic. You're getting herbicides, pesticides that are also obesogens. So they're going to affect your endocrine system. They're going to, you don't want to be bringing that in. They're cancer causing. Like, you just don't want to have an excess amount of that. So organic, non-GMO food, as often as you can. And then of course, if cost becomes an issue, then I always go back to the Environmental Working Group. I love the Dirty Dozen, Clean 15. So that way, if you had to choose, like let's say avocados are always so expensive and they're not on sale, but this bag of conventionally grown avocados is $4 and it's going to cost me $8 for these. avocados are on the clean 15. You're not eating the skin anyway. It's okay. You can buy that non-organic. But I always like to say as often as we can to buy organic, because we as consumers are influencing the marketplace and letting them know like this is what we want. And then the prices will ultimately come down because it's been artificially inflated. I blame Whole Foods. The guy who created Whole Foods, he jacked it all up and we all kind of bought into it. But it doesn't have to be. Organic doesn't have to be more expensive. It shouldn't be.
Okay. So we're filtering our water based on what's our environment. If then we're trying to eat the healthy of the organic type foods. If it comes down to cost, clean 15, dirty dozen. The dirty dozen are the ones you definitely buy organic if possible.
Correct.
And then the clean 15
or
are the things
it.
you can kind of get away with, right? Or skip it. So where do they go next? Where does the next person go? Because we know, hey, we don't want it. We want to try and reduce our toxic burden. What's the next big mover on the needle for you?
I mean, it could be the packaging that food comes in. So we have another chemical that disrupts thyroid, PFOA. So that's also in your non-stick cookware, but it's also in linings of things from because it helps things to not stick. So if you think about your pizza box, you think about microwave popcorn bags, the lining of it so that it doesn't all stick to the side. That's PFOA. A lot of takeout containers, that kind of thing. And also just the plastics in general, trying to eliminate plastics, and especially plastics that have been heated. So if you're getting takeout and it comes in a plastic container, I would get it the heck out of that container immediately, put it into something else, because any plastic, heat and oil and abrasion and acidity are going to mess with the molecules of the plastic, which is why if you've ever had Tupperware and you tried to put your leftover pasta in it, and then your Tupperware is stained orange. And part of the reason for that is that the acidity from the tomato and maybe some oil kind of blurred the lines between like, here's the plastic and here's the food. And you get tomato sauce into the plastic. And if there's sauce in your plastic, you better believe there's plastic in your sauce. So I feel like the packaging you put your food in, either where it comes from or how you're storing it, matters.
So is it fair to say just ditch the plastic and go maybe stainless steel or glass for most of your stuff? The Tupperware had its day, and now you go to glassware as a better
It's fine
rule.
for dried food, like your dried beans or little things for babies. If it's dry, that can be okay as long as it's not being heated. But otherwise, yeah, I stay away. Use glass.
Okay.
Glass
So
or stainless.
we're using we got water. We talked about organic foods, reducing processed foods, because those tend to be the more toxic type foods, is these Franken foods that we consume. We talked about organic versus inorganic when it comes to whole food. And then we start talking about the storage stuff and heating of stuff, cookware as you can, exchange. And again, ewg.org can help you with the healthier cookware. Glass is easy, but they can help you with different options there. Where do you go next? Do you go personal care products? Do you start to look at cleaning products? Where's the next big piece for you to go to?
Depends on the person. It always depends on the person. So those are both important. Cleaning products, there's so much stuff in cleaning products, and it's a double problem, because it's the problem that you're using it on the surfaces, let's say, that you're then like touching your mouth or touching your food, but also inhaling it because you spray and it. So I like to clean with things that are, basically DIY. You need white vinegar, alcohol, and essential oils, and make your own. And it's funny because we think that we need, like, that there's a there's a smell to clean, but like, what does clean really smell like?
It smells like that lady walking down the street who smells like Tide, right? It doesn't, isn't that what clean smells like, right?
Clean smells like nothing, right? It's like
Right.
nothing. It's right, but we make it smell like mountain rain or I don't know, flowers, and I love those smells too. But you can get it from essential oils that are non-toxic rather than. So if you see fragrance, so this is a big one, whether it's a personal care product or a household cleaning product that says fragrance on it, that can mean anything. It could be 300 things, 300 chemicals to be fragrance. And it's also likely phthalates. So it's things that are going to make it smell really nice and keep that linger. So you walk into the house and you're like, it smells so clean. And actually, I can't handle that. Like anything that is the old way that we used to do, and I was guilty of it too. Like it makes my eyes water and I sort of gag. I can't go down the cleaning product aisle in CVS, and I'm like, whoa, it's so strong. Where I used to be completely desensitized to it, and so that's a caveat. That's going to happen when you start up leveling all of the products that you're using. You become more sensitive because I think most people are just sort of numb to everything. And when you start waking your body up, waking your cells up again, both like internally and your olfactory sensors and villi in your gut, everything you just become more sensitive to everything, both positively and negatively. Like you absorb nutrients and you also, oh, I'm getting that smell now and I won't tolerate it.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's kind of like sweeteners, right? Because the people
yeah.
that don't eat a lot of sweet things and sugars are very sensitive to sweets when they eat them. They're like, wow, that's a lot. But you do get desensitized. And if you eat a lot of sugar, then you typically need more. And then if you go to the artificial sweeteners, then you really,
Yeah.
if you don't have it, you're like, oh my gosh, that has no flavoring to it because you got so sensitized to this stuff. And the artificial sweeteners are like, I don't know, 10 times, 100 times more sweet than the same amount of sugar, natural sugar.
Yeah.
But I think the same thing from a chemical standpoint. I can't walk into the Yankee Candle shop, right? I'm not, because that would just
can't walk past the store.
that makes me nauseous, right? So,
Yeah.
but so all of those things, like I think the general rule, if you're buying something because that fragrancy smell, if you're buying your Tide based on the type of smell, that's the type of thing you should probably be staying away from, right? Because it's artificial smell. It's loaded with toxins, things that are going to be disruptive. And those are some of the things. And what I think Allison's really kind of getting to with these things, any of those things with a lot of the fragrances in them have a lot of toxicity to them. So if you want that smelly stuff, if you want your clothes to smell like berries on a summer day when they come out of the dryer, you can still accomplish that without a toxic dryer sheet or a toxic fabric softener in your washer or whatever that plastic ball of stuff is that you throw in. And there's simple tips for that, right? And you talked about essential oils. You can get the little balls that you can put some safety pins in, drop some essential oils on those balls, and guess what? They will knock down the static. That will make your clothes smell like blueberries on a summer day, and you'll probably be just as happy. And after a while, I think you get used to not having everything, I say stink, but you get used to everything not stinking, and you don't miss it. I can't stand everything smelling like some artificial man-made, right? It just bugs me. So I think that it's looking at the stuff that's got those things and starting to make the changes and take those things. I usually tell, when I'm talking to people about like, make a change at a time. You don't have to throw everything out. I've done that, and that creates a lot of stress in a home. It's to come in and try and throw everything out. The better strategy is to okay, this bottle of whatever laundry detergent is out. I'm going to replace that with something something that's less toxic, healthier. Whether you want to do a DIY or look at some of the products that are now available, there's a lot of products that are available that you can get. Some of them come in little concentrates that you can get your glass spray bottle and you just drop a tablet in there that's just concentrated, healthier things. And now you paid less. It's healthier for you. So you're paying less up front and you're paying less at the back end for chronic illness, right?
And it's better for the environment too. So it's a win-win-win.
Yeah. So as you go through stuff and stuff starts to break down, I think that's where it's the easier way to make some of those changes to the toxic load is just, okay, this is empty. Let me change it out. My toothpaste, probably not one of the better ones. Let me get rid of it. My hair, one of the 27 shampoo bottles I have in my shower for my hair is running out. So let me get something that's healthier, right? And I want to point out, you said about the shower and the heat of the shower, I think is one of the places that we become most toxic. One, because of the heat and you vaporize things, but two, you're opening up your pores and then dumping a bunch of chemicals onto these open pores. And if we spent a little bit more time looking at the toxins that are on the, and I don't use a lot of beauty products, obviously, right? But they're loaded with problems. And what I find is a lot of people spend, and I want to get your opinion on this. A lot of people spend time trying to chase the organism or the mold or the other thing. And they're not looking at the simple things in their environment that may be creating a bigger issue. Spoiler alert, mold is here forever. You're never going to escape it, right? There's organisms everywhere. So you're never really going to escape them all. But people will go to dramatic lengths to try and test and find the elusive mold that they know for sure is bugging them, while at the same time drinking out of their plastic, Deer Park bottle that's been sitting in the hot sun. And then they're eating on stuff off of things that are unhealthy. And as they're eating unhealthy food and then putting a bunch of toxins on their skin to beautify it from the outside instead of the inside out. And then washing their clothes in all this beautiful fragrant stuff so their clothes stink and smell. And then because some of that food that was toxic that they were eating made the house stink, then they put their fragrant candle on to make it smell good, right? So all of this other stuff that's right in front of them, I say it's like jumping over dollar bills to pick up pennies. You want to spend all this money to look for the stuff that's toxic that probably is doing it, this crazy stuff that's in the environment. But don't miss the stuff that's in your current environment that you're doing day in and day out. But I think a lot of times the reason people don't want to go there is because that's within their comfort zone. This is the stuff that this is my stuff. It can't be the stuff I'm doing. This is my favorite lipstick, right? This is my favorite skin lotion, right?
It's the only one that looks good. It's the only one that works for my hair. And I promise you, as somebody who cares a lot about their hair, there are a lot of products out there that are non-toxic, and you have to find ones that work for you. You have to decide what is important enough to switch out, and what that is differs for everybody. Like some people, it's like, I will not stop getting my nails done. I will not. That's non-negotiable for me. Okay. Well, when I first learned about this, I stopped getting my nails done. And so it's been like 10 years since I've gotten my nails done. But, at first I felt awkward and was not happy about it. And then I was like, I'd rather not have that. I didn't want that. I wanted to make sure that I had a healthy body and I had healthy hormones because I wanted to have a baby. And then lo and behold, I did. And so I don't know if it was because I stopped going to get my nails done. I don't think so. But I'd like to think that all of the steps that I took to just detoxify our bodies and our home played a part in that.
Right.
The science shows that it does.
And I think that's the key. We're looking for the one thing often. And instead, what we've talked a lot about today is what are the things that really don't require an Allison, a me, that you can do on a simple basis to start reducing your load that's causing you to have this chronic stress response that's creating chronic illness, right? And so if you work on your sleep habits and behaviors, you work on better nutrition before you start arguing about what's the best diet. eat whole food, right? Start there, right? What about, I need to eat a certain diet for my thyroid? No, there's no thyroid specific diet. There's no adrenal specific diet. All that stuff is out there to market and sell books.
Yeah.
Eat whole food. That's the key. And then do some of the other advices that we talked about today. Start reducing the toxic load. Do I need to do a heavy metal test? No. How about you just stop putting those toxins on and in your body first? If you've done all of that and then you want to tax the burden, great. But I think doing that before you remove any of that stuff doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Because what should you expect, right? I've got all this stuff, right? Because you're in it, you're on it, you're rubbing it in, you're washing in it, you're doing that. So just reduce those things before you spend money on expensive tests. Do the things. Don't jump over the dollar bills to pick up pennies. So
shut off the toxic tap.
Yeah, it's not that it's simple. It's simple stuff. It may not be easy to make the changes because we get very attached to our microwave popcorn bag I have every night, right? But it's simple to make the changes, not always easy, but once you start making those changes slowly and steadily, like you probably won't even know how you started feeling and functioning better as you make those changes, because there won't be typically the aha moment where you go, that was it. When I gave up that microwave popcorn, that was the thing that did it. But if you're not doing that day in, day out, you're reducing the load. And if you do all those, some of those other things we covered today, you're probably going to see improvement in your health and well-being. So Allison, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I know we have a hard stop, so I want to kind of honor that. We didn't get through. We could have talked for another hour or so about more stuff. Totally. I know you had a list in front of you that you would have loved to have gotten to, and we didn't. But can you tell people a little bit about where they can find you? And I know you have, you wanted me to offer a gift or something to the listeners. So talk about who you are, where they can hear about you, and what it is they can get.
Yeah, well, thanks. Sure. So you can find me on social media. I'm on all of the places at Health Allie, ALLIE. That's me. And if you go to my website, AllisonSamon.com/roadmap, I have a guide, a chronic illness recovery guide that essentially talks about all of the things that we were talking about today. It walks you through everything, all the steps that I took to begin to recover from my chronic illness, and it won't take you 10 years to do.
Awesome. Well, Allison, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. There's an open invitation. You want to come back on? Obviously, we'll get you back on and we can finish the conversation and maybe even talk about some of the other stuff. So I appreciate you coming on. For the listeners, keep sharing the podcast with your friends. I know it's the Thyroid Answers podcast, but we really talk about more than thyroid issues. We talk about health and the things that cause the excessive cell stress that robs us of our health if we don't address those things. So it doesn't really matter what somebody's condition is. The guiding principles are identify what's creating that excessive stress load, reduce or eliminate those things. And guess what? You've got an innate intelligence in the body that when you reduce the things that are creating the excessive stress, it's not really a miracle, but the body can heal and repair, right? So thanks so much. And by the way, make sure everybody you go to wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a good rating. I think it's 5, maybe 5 stars. That's the one you want to check. And we'll sign off. All right, Allison, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It was great having you.